Hey guys, I just went ahead and finally complete Baldur's Gate 3. It took me about 96 hours to complete, and I also have 30 hours accumulated on other playthroughs, so I have about 126 hours in the game, and all of that is after the early access, so that is all on the finished version. I did not play the early access at all. Should also be noted that my 96-hour playthrough from start to finish was done entirely on split screen mode. Me and my cousin thought it would be fun to, play through together, sitting on the couch, and it was a great time. I absolutely loved and adored it, and it's super cool that they support split screen. But please do note that maybe some of the things that I have problems with in the game do not apply to the normal game, just playing normally like this footage here because I did play so much of it in split screen. But anyway, let me go ahead and get into the pros, the cons, and then give you my final verdict of the game. So first things first, the sound design in this game across the board is just phenomenal. All of the music tracks are straight bangers. The voice acting for everybody from the main cast to the side characters to even the extras like in the town are all phenomenal. None of them like broke my immersion or anything. Feels like everybody really put in a lot of effort, and I thoroughly was impressed with all of the voice acting in the game, which is usually not the case, especially in a CRPG. Voice acting is usually not very high up on the list of priorities, but it's clear that it was for Baldur's Gate 3, and all of them deliver beautifully. I also think the graphics deliver beautifully. You could say it's a beautiful game. I played the entire game on all ultra settings. I have a 3080 Ti, a Ryzen 7 5800X, 48 gigabytes of RAM in the game on an NVMe SSD, and it ran perfectly. Split screen is a little bit rough. It was usually hovering around 60, sometimes it dropped below 60, but that should be expected because it's rendering the game twice. However, whenever I played it, normal like this footage here, it was almost always like 120, 144 FPS, and it looks great. It's easily the best looking isometric game out there. It even beats, Diablo 4, which came out earlier this year, and I was thoroughly impressed with the graphics in that game. This game beats it easily. And the animations are very clean. The facial animations and the dialogue are great. Sometimes your character will do some weird stuff. It's kind of funny in the dialogue, but for the most part, all of the animations and the visuals are just great in the game. I also think that the writing and the side quests, along with the main quests, are all delivered wonderfully. I didn't really have any issues with any of the quests in the game, to be honest with you. I've seen some people that are like big D&D dweebs talk about it and say the storyline is kind of generic D&D, but I've never played D&D or watched anything D&D, so I have no idea if that's true or not. All of this, the world and everything was completely fresh to me, and I loved it. I loved the whole Mind Flayer storyline. Don't worry, no spoilers here or anything, but I love the Mind Flayer storyline. I thought that they're just very cool characters, and the lore behind them is really cool. The lore behind the Githyanki is really interesting. I just love the world and all of the storytelling, and even like the side quests that were fetch quests. There's one in Act 3 where you have to collect a bunch of parts of a whole, and I won't go into details, but you'll know when you get to it. I thought even like a fetch quest was done really, really well, and it beautifully intertwined into the main story narrative as well, which was super cool to see. And a lot of the side quests will do that. Like a lot of the side quests will end up tying back into the main quest line, and that's super rare to see. And I really, really enjoyed my time doing all of the quests, and I did do every single quest. I made sure once I got to the end of a chapter to check a guide and make sure that I had done every single side quest. So I 100% the game with everything that was possible for me to do. I did side with Minthra, and as a result, you do get locked out of 3 companions. So I didn't get to experience any of their storylines, unfortunately. But everything else that was possible for me to experience, I did, and I enjoyed every second of it. Like I really, really liked all of the quests. Um, I also think that the build diversity in the game and just the sheer amount of skills and spells and all of that is awesome. I do still have my complaints, which I voiced in another video earlier on the channel and my initial impressions, about how few and far between in the early game you can really cast your spells and feel very powerful. But do know that almost all of my issues that were in that initial impressions video when I was 30 hours in, almost all of those go away when you get further on into the game. And I've really noticed now that you're supposed to be weak and you're supposed to not be able to have access to your strong stuff early in the game. But by the end, honestly, it becomes almost trivial with how many spells you can cast and how many ways to replenish your spells. And you honestly just become a god. I see why they capped the level at 12 instead of 20 like they were like normal D&D, because wow, you are extremely strong at level 12. But I think the addition of multi-classing and all of that really adds a lot of depth to the combat and replayability, and I really am excited to play through the game and not only make different decisions in the story, but also make different decisions in my build and enjoy the other classes. But not everything is great in the game. And I think the biggest issue with this game is that people are barely through it, so a lot of the things that you're hearing are very positive. Let me give you some statistics on the game right now for the Steam version. Only 40% of the players are even past Act 1 of the game, and it's around 15 to 20% have even made it to Act 3 of the game. Only 5% of the entire player base has beaten the game as of now, about over a month after the game has released. That is insane. Like, typically when a game releases, you're looking at like a 30% is a low completion rate. Like a 25-30% is a low completion rate for a game. This is astronomically low. I've never seen lower in my life. I mean, Dark Souls games have higher percentages than this. I get it's a big game, but the reason why you're seeing so much positivity is people are not to Act 3 yet. And once you get to Act 3, the narrative kind of changes and your experience will change, because Act 3 is not finished yet. And I've looked around at other people's reviews to see if any of this was just a split screen problem, and it's not. I've seen this echoed from every single reviewer that has actually beaten the game. Act 3 right now just does not feel finished. The amount of bugs and glitches that I started to experience in Act 3 was absurd. The amount of times where a character would start talking and then they would just go silent and they would do this weird thing. And their lines of dialogue, the subtitles on the bottom, those would be continuing, but luckily, or else you'd have no idea what was going on, but there would be no voice acting whatsoever. That happened all the time once I got to Act 3. And that's typically indicative of a slow hard drive issue in a game. But like I said, this game is on an NVMe SSD, some of the fastest tech on the market. So that's definitely not the case with my PC. And I looked it up. It's actually just a very common glitch that happens in Act 3, unfortunately. And that really ruins a lot of the big moments. And another thing that's ruined is the best part of Act 1 and Act 2 is after you do basically anything, any sort of side quest or any sort of main quest, you can go and you can talk to your party members and you can get their opinions and their takes on everything that you just did, and you know, have like an actual conversation about the events that just transpired. That just stops happening in Act 3, unfortunately. And I don't want to say it feels like it's made by a different studio or something, but the bar is set so incredibly high from Act 1 to Act 2 that once you get into Act 3, which I don't think is bad, I just think it's unfinished. And it feels unfinished, and it just feels like a huge drop in quality, because you will do huge things in Act 3. Things I cannot talk about because I don't want to spoil anything, but you will do huge things in Act 3, and your companions will just say nothing. Like nothing at all. They will just have their stock dialogue. And it's really kind of upsetting because, at least for me, it feels like I kind of wasted my first playthrough of the game. Like, I feel as if I would have had an infinitely better experience had I have simply waited to play Act 3 for several patches. And here's the thing. I have no doubt in my mind that these things are going to be remedied and they're going to be fixed. Because apparently, I did a little deep diving, and apparently Divinity Original Sin 2 was like this as well. Now, I played Divinity Original Sin 2 significantly down the line from when it came out, like several years after it came out, so I didn't have any problems. It was a perfectly flawless experience, but apparently if you tried to play that game on day one, you had a lot of the same issues. It was such a big bug, in fact, that people could not even finish Divinity Original Sin 2 because their party members wouldn't even load in. It's crazy. So I have no doubt that this is most definitely going to be fixed. However, I'm reviewing the game. Oh, Jesus. Sorry for the full screen Zach jump scare. But I'm reviewing the game as it is right now. And patch 1 and patch 2 most definitely have fixed a lot of problems with the game, but here's the problem. I had over 80 hours in the game before patch 1 even hit. So I unfortunately did not get to reap the fruits of their labor that they went ahead and went through in order to get these like big patches out. And so I'm just reviewing the game as it is and as I experienced it. And I have no doubt, like I said, these things will be fixed eventually, but I'm not reviewing the game for what it will be eventually. I'm reviewing the game for what it is now, and it feels unfinished. My ending in particular was so incredibly bad and poorly done. I genuinely did not even believe that it was real. Like, I'm not even kidding. I'm not even being dramatic. I looked at my cousin and I said, well, surely there's going to be something after the credits. Like, there's going to be a whole after the credits thing. There was nothing after the credits. That was it. That was the end of the game. And I looked up the all of the endings. And there are, like, several, like, deviations to the ending. But I looked at a lot of them. And, like, at least 10 of them. And almost all of them were really bad. Like, really, really bad, just cuts off abruptly, and it just doesn't feel finished. There's one ending that I saw that actually felt finished, and it actually had what you would expect out of an ending like this, where, you know, you're talking to your party members afterwards, or you're at least getting, like, the update on what's happening to your party members after the game ends. But my ending just cut off, dude. Like, just completely cut off, and it was such a slap to the face. It felt like 96 hours were just out the fucking window, and I just felt stupid for even playing the game and finishing the game now, and putting so much effort into, like, dedicating, because I could only play it with my cousin when he was off from work on the weekends, because he has a long commute and we're on different schedules. So, like, I dedicated every single weekend of playing this game 10 plus hours over the weekend, and it was just such a slap to the face. Like, this ending that is just completely unfinished. And here's the thing. They're not saying that this game is early access anymore. They're saying this is completely finished. So I'm judging it as a completely finished product, and it's just not it right now. And so if I had to really break it down, I would say this. I would say Act 1 is a 10 out of 10. I really do truthfully believe it is perfection. It is some of the best video game, like, especially RPG, that I have played in my entire life. Not even just like in a few years, in my entire life. I could play Act 1 over and over and over again. It is so phenomenal. Act 2, I think it does take a little bit of a step down. It's not quite there, but I love how dark Act 2 gets. It's really, really dark out of nowhere, and I like it. But I do think that, especially in co-op, there's a lighting mechanic where you have to, like, stay in this light. I'm trying to speak generally to avoid spoilers. And that mechanic can be a little bit annoying when you're playing co-op, because, you know, the light's on one person, you guys all have to travel together, and you can't split up at all, and that can be a little bit annoying. But other than that, especially if you're like playing solo, I still think Act 2 is really, really good. I would give Act 2 probably like a 9 out of 10. I think it's amazing. Still very good. Um, and then Act 3 is just such a such a drop down. I still don't think it's bad, but I think you go from like this 9 or 10 out of 10 experience all the way down to probably like a 5 or like a 5.5. Like, and in case you don't know my rating scale, 5 is average, 6 is above average, 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is amazing, and 10 is near perfection, a masterpiece, true masterclass of game design. And I think that while 10 is really, really good, like practically perfection, 10 out of 10 stuff, and Act 2 is amazing, 9 out of 10 stuff, I think because Act 3 drops the ball so hard right now, I think that, and it's all the way down at like a 5 out of 10 or whatever, I think I do have to bring the score for the game all the way down to a 7 out of 10. So a good game. I do still think it's a good game, but here's the thing. I saw people comparing it to Mass Effect 3, and Mass Effect is my favorite trilogy of all time. It's my favorite gaming series of all time. And I remember very clearly how I felt when I finished Mass Effect 3 and the disappointment that I felt with the ending of that game. And here's the thing. Mass Effect 3 was incredible for the whole game up until like the last hour, right? That final mission, and even a lot of points in that final mission are really good. But it was up until the last hour. It's really good up until the last 15 hours. So it's not really, I don't think it's fair to compare it personally, because it's just like a whole nother world, man. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the game. I think overall, I have no doubt it's going to be patched, it's going to be fixed, and it's going to become an incredible experience. And I genuinely do believe once Act 3 is fixed and all of the endings are elaborated upon and the bugs are fixed and it's just like a smooth and finished experience, I do think this is going to be one of the best video games ever made. I do hold that opinion. However, I think as we get further and further past the release of the game, I don't want to say you're going to see an increase in negativity, but you're going to see an increase in criticism about the game, because like I said, the statistics are abysmal for how far people are in the game. I mean, realistically, you watching have not beaten the game, and you're probably statistically not even into Act 3 yet. So once we start to see those numbers getting boosted up, we start to see more people get past Act 1 and past Act 2 into Act 3, and we start to see more people completing the game, I think we'll start to get a better idea, and you'll start to see a lot of people agreeing with me. Of course, if people continue on this trajectory of never beating the game and, only 5% beating the game, you'll probably never see this, because by the time that the general person is actually getting to the end of the game, there's probably going to be 6 patches out, right? And the game is going to be largely fixed, and people will watch this review and they'll say, what the fuck was he talking about, dude? I didn't have any bugs at all. But as it stands right now, Act 3 is just not finished. And it's unfortunate because they are marketing it as a finished product. And most definitely you can finish the game, but that does not mean the game is finished. And any game developer will tell you that. They will tell you that just because you can finish a game, it does not mean a game is finished. I mean, there's a reason why games go gold and then they still have months where they continue developing, because they're fixing bugs, right? And they're fixing the experience. And I just think that this game could have been pushed out a little bit further, but I understand why they didn't, because September is stacked as hell. October is stacked as hell. But there's really nothing in November and December, so I would have personally liked to see them push it out to November and December, but, it is what it is. I'm most definitely going to play through the game at least 2 more times, once there's a lot of patches done and make some other decisions, and then another time when the mods have had some time to like blossom, because mods are going to add a ton of content to this game, just like they did with the Divinity Original Sin 2. In Divinity, people added entire new classes, uh, hundreds of new spells and interactions and gear. So I have no doubt that this game, you know, come a year or so, is going to be incredible. But anyway, that's my review of the game. Thank you so much for watching. Have a fantastic rest of your day. See all of you in the next video with Stream Marooney. Bye bye.